Hi, and welcome to another episode of Sergeant Spray Gun Productions. In this video, I'll be taking you through the primer and the paint on a 1999 Ford F250. Here I'm just mixing up some typical 2K urethane high build primer. Mix ratio is 4 parts primer, 1 part activator. I left out the repair footage because this roof should have actually been replaced and not repaired, but doing it for a friend for just the cost of materials, so we're gonna salvage this thing and see if we can save him some money. This primer doesn't require self-etching primer prior to applying it to bare metal on repairs this small, so I'm gonna skip the self-etching primer. Here I'm using my El Cheapo $50 primer gun with a 2.3mm tip. I have the fan pattern closed up almost all the way to where it's almost round and the fluid needle out only a couple of turns, so I can keep the repair area or the primer area as small as possible. The reason for that is because I'm going to be painting the roof with only about 5 ounces of base coat, so I'm not going to be applying color to the entire roof panel. Once the primer cures, I'll block sand it, sand the low area there, and apply seam sealer like they did from the factory. And speaking of seam sealer, there it is right next to my beer. Here I'm masking off the roof, getting it ready for paint. I'm starting with the front windshield molding, and a couple of different ways you can mask this off. What I'm doing right here is using some weed eater string, otherwise known as roping, and I'm tucking that underneath of the molding to lift the molding up so I can get some paint underneath and it won't leave a hard tape line or probably even peel in the future. Also, on the corners where I can't get the weed eater string in there without it just going completely underneath and in between the glass and the body of the truck, I've used some 3M pullback tape, which will lift up the molding also. I'm checking the rear window molding to see if I can use the rope or the 3M tape, and it turns out that I'm not going to be able to do that, so I'm just going to have to half-ass it and tape it off the way it is. Please excuse my political ranting as I listen to the radio and mask off this truck.
Shut up, libtard. Under the jail, it's a bit shit about fucking Obama.
I find masking to be boring and sometimes even aggravating. It's probably my least favorite part of the job. I have already wiped off the roof with wax and grease remover and applied some adhesion promoter to the seam sealer areas, and now I'm using a tack rag to tack the roof off before I start applying base coat. For the base coat, I'm using the DeVilbiss Technopro Light with a 1.3 millimeter fluid tip and the HV30 air cap. The first coat I'll use about 13 psi. Second coat I'll step it up a couple of psi, and for the last coat I'll use about 20 to 21. The settings on the gun are fan pattern is fully open and the fluid needle is turned out 3 turns. I've applied 2 coats of base coat, and I'm using my sun gun to see how close to full coverage I've gotten. Now that I've applied 2 coats of base coat to the primered areas and I've got almost full coverage, I'm going to use my DeVilbiss CBI with its HVLP air cap and apply a blending clear just past the areas where I'm going to apply my last couple of coats of base coat. All this blending clear is Standox 599 base coat binder and reduced 1:1 with urethane reducer, making it nothing more than base coat that doesn't have any color. I probably don't need to do this on such a dark metallic, and particularly not on a roof, but if you can spend a couple dollars worth of product and guarantee the results you're looking for, why not do it? Again, using my sun gun to make sure I've got full coverage and you can't see any primer through the paint. Now I'm ready to mix up my clear coat. I'm using Keystone 790 clear coat, high solids clear, and the mixing ratio is 2 parts clear, 1 part activator, and 25% reducer. So for this job I've used 12 ounces of clear, 6 ounces of activator, and about 4 ounces of reducer, which ended up being about 8 ounces too much because the TechnoPro Lite with the TE20 air cap is a bit more efficient than the DeVilbiss Plus that I used to use for clear coat, and I just haven't quite gotten used to that efficiency yet. Rather than use another 20-ounce liner for the clear coat, I decided to just clean up the 9-ounce cup and reuse it for clear and just refill it in between coats. With the deck up system, it's extremely quick and easy to refill the cups in between coats, which is why I decided to just use the 9-ounce liner instead of using another 20-ounce liner and just fill it in between coats, since I'd have to wait a few minutes anyway. For the clear coat, I'm still using the TechnoPro Lite, but I switched the air cap to the TE20, which you saw me doing a little earlier. And for the first coat, I applied the clear at 29 psi, which I thought was a little bit low. So the second coat I applied at 31 psi, which would explain the improved efficiency over my DeVilbiss Plus gun that I used to use for clear, which seemed to spray best at about 35 psi. I forgot that I had left the blower in the hose, and with the gun in one hand, that only left me one hand to get rid of it with, so the only thing I could really do is launch it in a safe direction. But I thought that was a little bit comical, so I went ahead and left that in the footage. We all make mistakes. It's a pretty hot day today, so I'm playing a little bit of beat the clock, and I want to try to get this thing clear coated before the temperature gets up too much past 85 degrees, so that I can avoid any dry spots at the overlaps. that's going to wrap up this job. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and now I've got to go clean my spray guns. Thanks for watching.